We're live. Cool. So I'm going to go from the. I added some notes into kind of the main report reviewing training to document. I'll drop it in the Slack in the channel right now. The chat, I mean. So let's just start with case one. And thank you, Marcy, for being so open to having your report re-reviewed.
It was a fascinating process, and I mean, I learned so much, and it was interesting what we sort of decided on the go together too, totally.
Right.
As we bumped into things, it wasn't necessarily that clear that from the start, I think, even from your perspective, right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. And I actually think this one was a pretty cool exercise in thinking about how to chunk the change and what it means to actually represent a change. So I'm excited to have that conversation. But I guess before we get to that, we should just take it from the top and say, what did people let's go by section. The intro section was page 4. What did people notice there, and what was there anything wrong or any corrections to be made?
Well, I put in that's the new title that I put in the new title, and then I put in the previous title below the URL. Mm-hmm. And I actually, for the changes occurred between, I actually taught myself how to use the Versionista document to go in and actually find that, which was helpful because the other report that you're reviewing, I didn't do that. So that's something that I'm gonna have to go back to the NIOSH report to fix. So that was cool to learn that. So I changed those dates too for the top part.
Yeah. So the previous title was indeed something I noticed, but there's a question here, which is how do we even scope the time window for the whole report, right? Because we can, of course, we can decide to cut off the window of change whenever we want. So if we're actually talking about the changes occurring between September 8th and September 30th, then the title didn't actually change in that window. It changed previously, I believe. So that's something it actually gets progressively harder, especially when you're looking at like some of the trickiest things to write about is when you have, let's say like 2 months that you want to write about and the page changed multiple times in different ways. And you have to make a decision. Do I bracket the whole thing and say it changed from here to here, or do I just pick maybe the most important time window at the end? But if the important window happened in the middle, then you kind of need to basically say, we analyze this time window from X to Y, and just be very clear about what we're analyzing. And so in this case, I think actually the previous title would be out of scope. Mm-hmm. Although that would be something like, if we did decide to take it that way, then I think what you did is basically right.
So just so I'm clear on that, so because we're scoping the time frame as we are, then that title change didn't occur within that title frame of the scope, so then it wouldn't be necessary. Even though it's on it appears on the Versionista diff, we still wouldn't include that change because it's not within that change didn't occur between the September 28th and September 30th. Is that?
Well, I believe it occurs in the Versionista diff when you do latest to base, and not when you compare sort of the September changes. So I think that actually happened in June, somewhere, if you compare June 9th to November 4th for September.
I mean, Justin, I think in this case, you just have to sort of decide. You can pick, you can have the range that sort of does have the title change in it, and then you just have to use those versionista snapshots, or you don't, but then you'd have to grab different images, right? Like you just have to make you have to pick images that conform to the dates that you want there, basically.
Yeah, and I did. That was relatedly. I did make that comment about this the screenshot that
Right.
about having that included in the screenshot if that's going to be included. Yeah, I noticed that wasn't in the final.
Right. Yeah.
So
So that's and I mean, you can kind of make that determination. Like, it's up to us to make that determination. Do we really need to go back to a version of the page when the difference was green power purchases versus green power purchases at EPA? That's not like an important difference, I would say.
Yeah.
And so we can just cut it off and not worry about that.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a significant. It doesn't really make a huge difference, but.
Yeah.
So I was also working off the Versionista dates that are in the screenshot, which are June 9th to September 21. So that's also what
exactly.
I was. Okay.
Yeah. So
because the change happens in there.
Yes. So that's an error in scoping if we do say side by sides June 9th to September, then it's up to us. I would say that is also wrong. So we narrow the screenshot dates there.
To what though? Because there wasn't any closer dates in Versionista, and there isn't any in Wayback either, if I remember correctly. Because I think the Wayback screenshots start in October.
Oh, but there's September 30th and September 21st.
Oh yes.
Cool. So then,
yeah, that makes sense because that's closer to the closest date of the change. So that would make sense to use that version. Yeah. Okay.
Cool, but it's definitely a good catch. Just kind of an exercise in figuring out like how to scope the time window.
But then in that's also out of the. Because it's on the September 21st to September 30th Versionista diff, that change isn't showing. Or am I looking at something wrong? It appears on the Versionista diff that I'm looking at from September 21st to September 30th. The change has already occurred.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing the change. Like
Exactly.
You're looking from the 21st of September to what?
September 30th. But then on the changes occurred between. Did other people put September 28th to September 30th? That's what I saw.
I had, yeah, no, it would have been September 19th, at like 9:42 to September 21st at 9:03 p.m.
Yep.
So,
You're right.
Me?
Yeah, it's that you have to compare. No, you're right. You have to compare the June 9th to September 21st. So the change happened
on the 21st. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was wrong. So then in that case, Justin, sorry. Then you would have to. In that case, you would write the title because that's the only way we can represent that.
And Jake, you're right on the 21st to the 19th.
Right.
That was my boo-boo.
Mhm.
Sorry, the actual thing has a narrow time window. I don't have Versionista up right now. I just want to check if there's something missing. We got to a narrow time window in the actual report.
Correct.
The actual report shows the side by side is 6/9 to 9/21, and then the changes occurred between Sep 19 9:42 a.m. and Sep 21st
Yep.
9:03. That's also what I saw from Versionista.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I was looking at the wrong one. Yep. That's
Yep.
good.
And that's what we have in the report. In which
And
case,
so then you brought back the side by side view from like the 28th to the 21st, just to narrow it a little bit, I guess.
right. Yes. And in that case, in the report itself, the page title is wrong, right? Because we call page 3 in the report EPA.
Yeah.
Green power purchases / renewable energy credits.
Right.
But you would call it green power purchases, previously green power purchases at EPA. So, Justin, sorry for saying you were wrong. You were right.
Well, I think it goes. The new version is EPA green power purchases,
Or yeah,
oh my
the
God.
other way to flip it.
yeah, green power purchases at EPA, and
Yeah.
it used to be just
Mhm.
green power purchases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. So, yes. So then the next thing I wanted to discuss is the description of the changes themselves. So what did people notice here?
Sorry, go, Jake.
Sure. So just like a few things, right? I mean, like I think the practice of using like first, second, and third, is a little bit informal, I guess, and not necessary. So I just removed those. So changed sentence under EPA's blanket green power contract. So just kind of, I didn't know that those were that important. So it's just kind of, some syntax. It was repetitive in each section saying under which section we're talking. So the EPA's blanket green power contract section. So I just cut down on that. I think it's just a practice in wordiness, I think, in some of these, right? And just being really straight to the point. But honestly, I didn't see too much. This is interesting. I mean, it's like this is tough because the rearrangement of the words and the sentences changed the meaning of it a lot. And I don't think this really gets to that. It just talks about what's removed and what's added. Like they moved a piece of the first sentence to the last sentence. And one of the things that just got lost in all those changes was that the EPA is no longer covering 100% of its energy usage with RECs, right? Or the other things that they talked about, the green, what is it? Sorry, the smaller, by several smaller green power. I don't know what those are, but anyway. So it just seemed to me like there was a lot of change in meaning of the section that wasn't talked about in here. I didn't quite know what the better way to do, the better approach is, but I know that we're like this write-up is very specific about what's changed, but there wasn't much talk about changing the meaning. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Other thoughts? I think that's exactly the conversation that we should be trying to hash out. It's kind of tricky because you kind of have to actually think about the meaning of the sentences and how they get read.
I will say, I think there's an opportunity to like sort of be really kind of boring and just like line by line in the each page, and then in the top material sort of like highlight as one of the important changes, like you know, the meaning of this sentence was altered in this way, and you know, even they are probably not editorialized very much, but just make clear that there was really a meaning change, and not just like say what was this meant.
Yeah.
I think you can also do that with like, you know, footnotes or with just straight up comments down in this part as well. I think that would be fine as well.
Yeah, I think for me that's I didn't spend as much time in this section, but in general, that's for me where the sort of assume that there's context sort of made things a little bit tricky, because I completely agree with Jake's point, but I didn't know how much I was supposed to assume that we were relying on previously established context at the outset.
The other thing I was thinking about when I was trying to do this also was like the presentation of it as well, like how, like I think, and I think to Jake's point, like balancing, focusing on like the actual meaning change rather than like the logic of just change sentences, but also like how to present it in a way that's like readable, I guess, or how the best way to kind of consume it. So I kind of followed the basic format that was there first, like highlighted the change in the, like I changed the wording as Jake mentioned to like take out the, like the under EPA's blanket green power contract section and just focus like change sentence from one to the other in the top. But then the tricky part was for me was thinking how the last, where is it? Is it the last sentence? And so there was like I got the sense that they moved part of the subject of the first sentence to the last sentence of the most recent change, and then the very last sentence of the original seemed to be gone. So I was thinking in terms of thinking with the words change and add and delete and removed. I thought it was interesting. I just put in they changed the first sentence and changed the second ones and then removed the final one of the original. And then I noticed that on the final that they added that the last sentence on the new one was an added sentence, where my thinking on that was that added was like equated with like new content, whereas I felt like kind of the subject of that sentence came from the first sentence of the original. So that's where I was kind of debating and thinking how to present that. So I ended up just doing change sentences, and then deleted last sentence, and didn't do an addition but I was thinking about it after, and I can see the logic for the decision on the added, because there's a new sentence in the new page that's added to that paragraph that wasn't in that spot at the end. But I guess just for me, thinking about the nuances of what those words actually signify was something I was thinking about.
Totally and I went back and forth on that, but I would appreciate totally if he can articulate what he did to me about the rationale for using changed versus removed and added, because that really helped to sort of hone the writing for me afterwards.
Yeah, it wasn't an obvious thing. Actually, Justin, I think your reasoning is similar to how I ended up thinking about it. The first sentence was changed from my perspective, even though there was like semantic meaning lost about the 100%. But in the middle two sentences, the thing that kind of made me decide to group them was the fact that, in the first version, there's, right, like they moved content from the first sentence to the second sentence across the change. So I figured that if you were to just compare the sentences as they were in the paragraph, then you could then isolate that change, and it would be misleading in terms of like you would think if I just presented the like loss of the Defense Logistics Agency energy from when comparing across the two changes, that basically convinced me that we should group them together and compare the two. That wasn't what said. I'm trying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think those two sentences, I group those two sentences too.
In the previous version, the procured through Defense Logistics Energy is in the second sentence, but in the current version, it's Defense Logistics Agency Energy is in the first sentence. So if you were to say like sentence 2 changed from X to Y, then it would look like a bigger change than it really was, is basically what I'm saying. And you'd have to basically always talk about them together, so that's why.
Hey, Toli, it's a little bit hard to hear you. I don't know if that's just me.
No, it's not. You're just like you were fine before.
I don't know. I plugged in my charger, so I don't know.
Could you just repeat what you just said
Yeah.
earlier, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so the biggest thing, like looking at the middle two sentences, the biggest thing that made me think to group them together is the fact that, you know, the point about procured through Defense Logistics Agency Energy, that was in the second sentence in the previous version, but in the current version, that's in the first sentence. So if I really was comparing sentence 2 to sentence 2, then it would look like a bigger change than it really was. Semantically, it makes sense to group those two sentences together because they're talking about, they're just kind of reordering how they're talking about these things. And it's not a very common thing that we've done to say like, well, these two sentences should really be grouped because sentences are like a natural way to chunk things. But I think in this case it's appropriate. And then, you know, a lot of the same meaning is there throughout. So does that make sense? Can you hear me?
Your volume is like so hard.
It's still kind of hard. I wonder if you're like if your microphone's here.
No, it's not. It's not. Is this better? I don't know.
It's literally just like jolting, like for half a second, really loud, and then it's going back to being really quiet. Is mine doing that as well?
Hello?
Yeah, it's different, but sort of.
A little bit.
Sorry.
We have the same computer, and I'm just wondering if this computer is just like a piece of crap somehow. At least, like, that's really frustrating. It wasn't a cheap computer.
Didn't you just get it?
Yeah, that's why I'm frustrated.
That's not good. That's not good.
Okay.
So I think we caught what you said, Toli. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I mean, do people see the logic in the last sentence being like the difference between changing? You know, we have basically the decision we can make is to say something changed or to say something was removed and added. And do people see the logic in the last sentence?
I see it now. I see the logic in the deleted, and I see the logic in the added, like now, like after thinking about it. But when I did it, I just thought, I didn't see an addition. I just saw I guess it, but it makes sense. It makes sense now. I can see, because there's a new there's a different sentence with a subject that wasn't there prior. That subject or content wasn't in that spot prior to the change. So I can understand how that new subject was added to the end of those sentences. So it makes sense to me.
Right.
You had it as removed only?
No, I had it changed. I included it as changed, I think. Yeah, I didn't say, the one that I had deleted was, if I remember correctly, combined with an additional contracts for delivered, like the last sentence of the June 9th screenshot. That's what I had as removed.
actually doesn't. I feel like what you said all the way back when we started with this conversation is what makes me think that the way it was done with the added is right. That like if you take something out of a new place, such that it's sort of technically similar words, but with a different meaning or something, it almost makes sense to say added, even though the words are similar in a way. And that gets to what you were saying too, Jake. Like that, the meaning is kind of what we want to reflect, and the meaning is best reflected by the saying added. I feel like, but
Yeah, that makes sense. My thinking was, and I can see how that thinking is more logical, is more clear. My thinking was just I associated with added with new, and it wasn't really new because it was already, like it was kind of in the first sentence of the June 9th. So I was thinking added as new, and rather than added as in like there's in the September 21st, there's a new sentence in that position where it previously wasn't. So it makes sense. After I looked at the final, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Good one, guys. But when I was doing it, had a different thinking process.
do you think this is a place where like a footnote maybe could have been helpful to just say like, well, some of this language is similar. It was added in a way that it created a different meaning or something like that. Just so that if someone was reading it, they wouldn't be like, what? They didn't add this. This was like already here. So.
Yeah. Marcy, I don't know if you have more to add from kind of your experience thinking about that.
No, I think this was a good page to work from. I just back to Justin's point about sort of the meaning. I mean, I think having just a page thrown at us in the middle is a challenge, right? I mean, obviously it makes you focus on the technical, but as Sarah was saying, the context isn't there. And so, it's interesting to think about the pros and cons of sort of, okay, so you have, I'm sure those of you who worked on reports, it's sort of an iterative process, right, of sort of thinking about how you write the contextual stuff up front and then what gets focused on in the specific pages. But my sense, I think, was that these page descriptions were really supposed to be sort of a pure description of change, of the changes, whereas we have a lot of opportunity both in overview and description to focus on the meaning of those changes.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Is my audio still bad? Yes, okay.
Yes.
What if I, is this better? No?
No.
Oh my God. Jake is saying it.
Better for Jake.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Yeah, so I think we should. Hopefully, this was a good discussion. I think it captured a lot of the decisions we kind of grapple with, and it's hard in a way. Like we have to, like, how close are we getting to actually needing to know about what, like, an REC really is? It crosses that line at some point, because if you actually try to understand if the meaning is conserved, then you kind of have to think about what's actually being written and said. So you can't really avoid that. I think that's something that we have to deal with. That you can't be like purely objective in that sense, just counting words or something. But the synthesis and contextualization, you're right, Marcy, is the thing that really is the thing that like journalists read and anyone who actually reads a report will read, and that's almost like a separate exercise to convey that. And here, one of the biggest points, and I think we make this, is that this, the 100% of agency-wide estimated electricity is not written in the new version. So I think that's one of the biggest points lost during this change. I think So, just quickly to finish up this case study. The screenshot, I would say, is pretty good. Maybe it could be zoomed in a little bit because the changes to the scope. I think, Jake, you noted that in your review. But overall, I would say it's not so bad. One thing I try not to do is, it's clear that whoever made the screenshot, either me or Marcy, we're clicking on the links under green and UPA, and they're purple. So I usually just make sure that they're not, or something. It's a small thing. But and the last thing is, in the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine section, we really want to present kind of the before and after versions of the change. So you have the October 14th there, and if there's no previous version, then we have to note that. But if there is, then we kind of really want to bracket the change with so
Yeah.
Can you call your phone to this meeting?
Yep. All right.
It's only going to take 30 seconds, and it's going to improve the next 20 minutes drastically.
What should we talk about while he calls in? Nothing.
What's happening over there, Jake? Are you in the office?
Yeah, check this view out.
Oh, nice one.
Yeah.
No snow though, right? We got a
Nice
No snow.
view.
No snow.
Do you
Thanks,
like
guys.
Do you like a swanky corner office? What? How are you?
No.
Are you supposed to be like in the middle of a building without windows and sight
The
anywhere?
conference.
No, I'm in a conference room.
What floor are you on?
I'm on the 28th floor, so I can't. This is generally where I have to retreat to. I work on the 3rd floor, so
Yes.
this is the only place I can find an actual room to sit in.
Sounds
But there's no offices at Bloomberg. Even Mike sits out in the open.
really.
Yep,
Do people just walk up and bother him?
you can if you really want to. if you want to take that leap.
You should do it. The day that you decide you don't want to work at Bloomberg anymore.
that'll be my first and only approach.
You'd be like, hey, Mike. And then you're out.
It's been a great run, Mike. Thank you. What else? Oh, I'm going to the Fed this
How's this?
afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there he is.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
What are you doing at the Fed?
They want to meet with us periodically to talk about electronic trading, and generally it's more of just like an information grab. Like what do we know? What are market shares looking like for trading platforms? And they're just kind of tapping for information for the most part. I mean, what we'd love to do is increase our footprint there, but it doesn't ever really happen.
I used to work for the Fed in San Francisco.
Oh, cool.
That is cool.
Cool.
Is it good now?
Yeah.
It's great.
Cool. Thanks for
Yeah,
making
much
me do
better.
that. All right. All right. So let's. So just to summarize case one, Justin was right. We should have the change in the title. If anyone doesn't know how to get the time window change from Versionista, here's this. I dropped it in the chat. That's a link to the explanation of how to do that. So just go through it and let me know if you have any questions. The sentences and the change sentence, the wording that we use to describe the change should be simplified. So basically what Jake was saying, change sentence X to Y, something very simple. When we have like a large amounts of changes, we sometimes write like a header above, like, we describe which section on the page is being looked at, but that we don't do that per change. We do that kind of like grouping the changes. And then we had a discussion about how to exactly parse the sentences, whether we should add, remove, or use change. So minor point about the screenshot, and then the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. We are saying Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. Internet Archive is the organization. Wayback Machine is the tool. So trying to be consistent there. Cool. So case 2. Well, actually, before I go on, yeah, any questions?
So is my audio still really bad too? Because I can also switch. But anyway, I'll do that after I say this. I was going to say, like, the language that we use to describe the change has gotten way crazier in the past and can, right? Like in some sense, even though we were thinking about addition and removal versus change, these were somewhat straightforward. It was like a from to. But sometimes like a title changes and you want to say like the title of something has changed from this to this. We've done it a lot of times and it's gotten clearer and clearer for me over like the last year. But I feel like it's easy to not see that. So I would say like, well, most of the time I wouldn't say just going and looking at old reports is like necessarily going to answer questions. For you, in this case, I think it is like, if we just try, for content change reports especially, when we're trying to sort of just keep a similar tone to the one we had in the past, I'd say if there's ever confusion about language, usually I just go pull up an old report and say like, well, what did we do in a couple of similar instances? And typically, I think for clarity, we try to stick to the from blank to blank, but there might be instances in which that's not ideal. So.
Can I ask one more question about this one? So if we are going to be changing the title, would that be like 4.1a, and like then the other points would be like B, C, D? Would that is the noting it that change at the top part with like the URL and the side-by-side view sufficient, or should we have like changed page title from Green Power purchases to Green Power purchases at EPA in the description of changes?
Yeah, it should be noted as an object itself.
Mute the computer. That's all you have to do.
I did.
No, now you did.
Okay. I don't know why that. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That makes more sense. So yeah, it basically we want to be able to refer to any change with a code. That's the way we think about it. So if the title changed, even if it's insignificant, we want to basically be able to say, oh, look at 4.1a, that really identifies the title change. Yeah, Jim.
Do we need to describe every single change in a screenshot?
That's what we've done. And if you think that that's a crazy exercise, for some reason, we have the prerogative to say, we did not examine this section or something like that.
Okay.
But we have to be very clear about what we are analyzing versus what we're not. And if you want to say like small, like formatting differences or like grammatical mistakes were not, analyzed or punctuation was not noted. Small changes in punctuation were not noted. Like we can say all those things. We just have to be clear about what we're not analyzed.
Okay.
I do think once we get, I agree, maybe like grammar and punctuation is fine. I'd say once we do like a part of a section, right? Like once we do some unit, it's probably best to try to enumerate everything within that unit. Just because for a lot of the reasons we just said, when something is moved from like one part of a page to another or something like that, I think there's a worry that we could run the risk of accidentally misrepresenting something or being like accused of misrepresenting something by not looking at the fact that things, within the page still sort of had some relationship with one another. So we don't want to chunk down too small to just like a single sentence. And I think to the extent possible, just going with whatever is semantically sort of related and then enumerating everything there is probably best. But yeah, it can get crazy sometimes, for sure.
I don't know if you've looked at the whole report on this one, but for screenshot 4.1, the first removal is just an extraneous word, right? So we put that in.
Yeah, it used to say RR indirect, but now they were like, oh, it should say R indirect.
And yeah, not that it really matters, but it does indicate that they're actually reading through and proofing their pages.
Also, I mean, for that one, it just, because it's the first change, I think that's
Right.
part of it too, right? If you,
Yeah.
it's the first thing that pops up as people are looking at the side by side.
Yeah.
I think one of the benefits of that is that it doesn't appear that we're cherry picking changes to present a certain perspective.
Excellent point.
They can still be, some can have greater emphasis, you know, as you discussed previously, but I think that I think it's important to be, if on a particular page, it makes sense to be complete.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
totally agree. And
definitely.
I would just say that like that is important, not just from like a nice, like somewhat objective perspective, but also just from like a building confidence with journalists and with the public perspective. Like if it looks like we haven't cherry picked, if it looks like we've hit all these specific little things, then people will know, oh, you know, they actually did that. They actually spent all that time going through. So I think that that's a good confidence builder. Even though, to your point before, Jake, I think it's totally reasonable to say, we know there have been changes in this part that are about grammar or punctuation or something, and we didn't. Like, if there's hundreds or something like that, that would definitely be the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah, and
also
the reality-
we're also making a
Okay.
statement, if you would allude to that, and there's a whole bunch of them about, you know, proper web management too, right?
Right. Yes. Exactly. And yeah, and beyond it seeming like we're kind of approaching subjectively, it does actually like make you have to assess the entire page. And obviously, the context up top is where we synthesize, but then we can say, well, yeah, we synthesized after we went through everything, and that's the exercise. Cool. Any other points, questions? All right. So with the remaining 10 minutes, we're obviously not going to be able to get through what's even a crazier, harder description of changes to the website. But maybe what we can do is just go over and frame the exercise better, so we're all on the same page. And then for the next round, everyone can try to hand at rewriting this and making it better. So does someone want to try to say like what happened here? Do people just not get it because it was so poorly written?
And because none of the links work.
Right.
It was a little challenging to
It worked
even
back-
start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was
It
having
was
trouble.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and also just being dropped in, right, to the page,
right.
as opposed to being able to read the context first. Right?
I cheated and I went to the final report. I gave up quite quickly. So just as far as from what I could gather, so the original URLs for this kids page started redirecting to a signpost that it's being updated to reflect the administration's new agenda, and said that it was accessible via the snapshot or the archive. So I think one of the big things that we're talking about here is that it's in fact not accessible in the archive. What I found out like way late, like maybe this morning, was that there actually is a live page for EPA Kids and climate change. That's a different URL. It's the 2 backslashes, and we don't know if there's any difference in content between the original and the new. So that left me a little bit perplexed as to what the big deal is. But then I realized that it is then it sort of dawned on me that, oh wow, this is an access report, right? And so it's just more of a comment on the fact that this was no longer accessible. This original URL is no longer accessible. It's no longer also, there's no archive of it that's accessible on their January snapshot. I'm leaving a few things out, but maybe that's just a good place to start, and someone else to take it from there.
I just want to say, for context, one way of almost like hiding something but putting it online, right? Like if you use Google Docs or something, you can say like share this link, but you trust that no one else in the world's going to find it because it's some like crazy string of characters, and you can host something on your own webpage. We do this all the time under embargo. We host something online publicly, ostensibly, but since it's not searchable and since it has a pretty complex URL, no one ever gets to it. So I would say that something being online it's important to note, especially because as a talking point, people say, but if it's literally linked from nowhere and it has some weird thing like 2 slashes that no one would ever think to do, then it's basically not something anyone's ever going to see for that reason. And it not being linked from anywhere is really important, because the way Google decides to index something is by linking, by the incoming links. And so if something is not linked from anywhere, it will be way down Google search results if it's on the Google search results at all.
Yeah, or you'd have to know exactly what to search for before even going under.
But wait, I mean, if you just Google EPA climate change kids, it's the first result. Is that? Am I missing some? I'm a little confused about this point.
Is that true? Yeah. I mean, that doesn't surprise me that much. Once you start looking for climate change kids and using pretty specific, I mean, that's obviously not that specific in a way, but
like I guess my point is then, like, where do we enter into a discussion about that at all ever, or about effectively islanding a link that you can't get to it from EPA.gov, but if you Google it you can get to it? Like
we did in this report.
We did,
actually.
Yeah.
Because we thought it was important enough to mention that this is still available that way, and we didn't want that to be misleading. So it's a footnote that's pretty substantial. But if you look at the report itself, the final, you can see that. It's kind of like a long footnote.
Yeah, we try to assess Google indexing, and one thing I'll say is that this, I believe, has risen in the Google search results since the report came out. Actually, a few articles that covered our report linked to the double slash, saying like, hey, it's still available here, but it's completely like islanded. So that actually might have kicked it up just by increasing indexing to it.
Look at the listing just below, right? Is that it?
Yeah, right, exactly. This is the article.
So I do think, it's hard to do that comparison now. We should have documented where it lived maybe back then. Maybe we did, but it was definitely. I mean, once you started doing it's also confusing, because once you started doing, using quotes and doing exact sentence searches, right? Like if you pull out a sentence from the kid's site and it's a whole sentence, string of words, and it's verbatim, and you put that in quotes, then Google starts narrowing down very quickly, and so you can just get one result, and it's the double slash because it's the only thing that has that text on it in the whole web. But that's there's a line in between that and just using a couple of keywords, and the question is, when do you sort of say this is really accessible versus when do you say, if you weren't literally on this page searching for exact text, you wouldn't be able to find the page again.
Right. So we only have a few more minutes. I know that people have to run right at noon. So let me just quickly run through just explaining how to even see that this is inaccessible, and then we'll leave it at do your best at rewriting. Just try to rewrite the page is what I would say, and add information as much as you can. This is the January 19th snapshot. I think you all are familiar with it. This is the climate change page from that snapshot, and linked from the page, if you scroll down to the right, is the Student's Guide to Global Climate Change. If I click on that, there's a notice that pops up that says, you are now leaving EPA January 19 snapshot. If I actually hover over this, you will see, you'll see that at the bottom left, it says a URL that's outside of the January 19 snapshot, www.epa.gov/climate-change/kids. And this we believe happened because January 19 snapshot only absorbed everything that was www.epa.gov. So anything that's like www3, espanol.epa didn't make it in there. And that's a persisting problem that we've continuously called out to EPA. So if I click this, if I click OK, I actually get sent to the notice page saying that this page is being updated. I think you all have seen this page as well. Basically, this is the point of the report, is to say, hey, you guys are saying you archived, like you removed the climate change website and you're saying you archived it, but it's not archived and it's really not easy to find. And that's the point of the report. The Washington Post was convinced that this was important enough and wrote about it. And the argument is whether or not this is like intentional, you guys are doing a hasty job and this is a hard exercise. You should be sure to archive these things. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, so just for clarity, that what Jolie just said is that this page is not in the archive. So it's not the archived version that is going to this signpost page. It's that there is no archived version. It's pointing to the external page, and then the external page redirects to the signpost page. So that's it. It's that it's totally missing from the archive, and the link is just pointing outside of the archive. That's basically the error. And that's what was done for anything that wasn't www, including a bunch of Spanish language pages.
Yeah.
Was there ever any interest in your guys' part to write something up about that big
The
issue?
Spanish?
No, the the things that were outside of www.
That's this report, basically.
Okay.
Well, yeah, this is one case study of that.
But it's one case study related to that larger issue, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we could have written another thing, like running down what we thought about access assessment reports, which I think I said last time, was that they were never going to be comprehensive, because once you start messing with thousands of pages, like unless you're doing a statistical analysis, which we've done in other ways, we're just never going to run down every case study. So the goal was to kind of have examples, like canonical examples of the ways that they changed things or made mistakes. Of course, we could change that and try to be more comprehensive. Yeah, especially after we do one like this. I agree, Marcy, we could have gone back and done a more comprehensive thing. You know, we wanted to get this out kind of quickly, but then we could look back and say,
We're losing you. Yeah.
Well, just to round that off, I'll say that we have identified pages that are not archived anywhere. So this particular, the student's guide, is archived on the EPA's, this other EPA archive, which is just like a separate site.
to clarify, they did this after this report
Yes,
came out.
I was about to say that. Yes. They did this after the report came out, basically because they realized that that they didn't archive it. And also this page that Jake was talking about with the 2 slashes means that likely this information is, it's a strange thing, but it's live right now at something like an EPA.gov. So there's a lot of weird stuff here, but certainly access has been reduced, and that was a story that we wanted to tell, and that's why this is a pretty complicated thing to say. So we're already 2 minutes over, and I know, Justin, you had to run.
I have to too.
I think Marcy too. So is there anything that I can clarify? Sorry, what?
Oh, me as well.
Okay. Yes. So, is there anything that I should clarify right now before we all head out about next steps here? I think, you can use the report as a guide to help you understand. I know that the beta versions make it even trickier, but maybe that's part of the challenge. Do you guys think that this is a reasonable exercise to try to do?
give it a go.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. All right. We'll
Thanks,
figure out
guys.
the next time
Thank
Thanks,
we-
you.
guys. Take care.
See
Have a
ya.
good
Okay.
afternoon.
Bye bye.
Bye.
What's wrong with our computers? It's really
I don't
annoying.
know, but it's been doing this. Are we still recording?
Yeah.